Hey, how's everyone doing? Today I'm going to start a new set of tutorials. This is going to be aimed at people who don't really know JavaScript at all. It's going to be, in essence, a JavaScript for beginners, even JavaScript for absolute beginners, because I'm going to talk about learning JavaScript from the ground up. This will assume really no experience with JavaScript on your part, or even any experience with programming on your part. So if you're excited about that idea, then keep following. To do a brief overview of what to expect from this first video and from the following ones, what I'm going to talk about today is, first off, who am I? What's my background? Then I'll talk about what JavaScript is and why it might be useful to you, why you might want to learn it. Although if you're here, you probably have already decided that you do. Then we'll go over some basic setup needed to get JavaScript running. What we'll do is we'll get something just displaying on the screen saying hello world. And finally, we'll go over some tools associated with JavaScript development. So debuggers, mostly it'll be a quick tour of the developer console in Chrome, which is probably the meat and potatoes of JavaScript development, at least in the browser. To begin, who am I? Well, this is Simon Dev, so you can guess my name. Hello, my name is Simon. I have about 18 years experience in programming in general, split pretty evenly between game development and at Google. So in game development, I worked in C++ almost exclusively, and I was primarily an optimization guy. So you have the game, you need it to run at 30 or 60 FPS, frames per second. Most developers are concerned with just getting their features in, and you have someone like me who is profiling the code, having to understand large swaths of it, and figuring out how to make things happen much faster. At Google, I had a variety of roles. I've worked on internal projects, on external projects like Chrome. I've led teams, and I mostly worked in C++ there, although by the end I was starting to do some Python and even a tiny bit of JavaScript. I wasn't actually writing the JavaScript myself. I was mostly, at that point, reviewing other people's JavaScript. So I managed to learn a little bit, but not a whole lot. This set of tutorials will follow me actually learning along with you. And what I'll be doing is walking you through how I would learn a new language, because I will be learning a new language. To begin, what is JavaScript? You can see from the Wikipedia page, JavaScript, often abbreviated as JS, is a high-level, just-in-time compiled, object-oriented programming language that conforms to the ECMAScript specification. I would recommend quickly reading the JavaScript Wikipedia page, but we'll go over some of the details here. If you're unfamiliar with high level, it just means that it abstracts away a lot of the details of the underlying computer. You don't need to know what you're running on. You could be running on a smartphone, you could be running on a computer, you could be running on some magical system, an Xbox, who knows. The point is that you write your JavaScript and you don't need to know the details of the computer. Just-in-time compiled. Just-in-time compilation just refers to the way that the code is executed. So when you visit a web page and the JavaScript is downloaded, it's not downloaded in compiled form. Chrome actually compiles it as it's executing. Chrome has a library in it called V8. V8 is the JavaScript engine. V8 takes the uncompiled code in a web page and compiles it to run on your computer. Now, why do you want to learn JavaScript? Often, JavaScript is associated with being a front-end language, and this is pretty true. So when you're surfing the web and you're visiting web pages, that is all JavaScript running. You've got HTML and JavaScript and CSS and whatever else, but that's why it's often associated with being a front-end language. But there's a lot of other use for it. You can do a lot of game development in JavaScript directly in your browser. So let's just quickly look at some of the common libraries here. You can do 2D development. So here is a very popular library called Phaser that I've used a little bit. You can see that it supports a whole bunch of things, physics, animation, particles, that kind of thing. And it even runs on the phone. So if you write JavaScript for the browser, you can actually get it onto your phone. We'll cover that at some point later. It's not just 2D. There's 3D available as well. So you can do 3D game development. And it's fully hardware accelerated, GPU accelerated, shader support, the works. Let's just go check out some of these demos here. And you can see here, you can do some pretty cool stuff in JavaScript in your browser. And there's tons of other libraries. So let's, for example, TensorFlow, Google's machine learning oriented library. It's available in multiple languages, including JavaScript. So you can run machine learning models in your browser. There's a common misnomer that JavaScript is just a front-end language, while other languages like Python, Go are back-end or server-side languages. And this is totally wrong. There are projects that get JavaScript running on the back-end as well. So let's look up nodejs. Node.js is a JavaScript runtime. And what that means is that it provides a way to execute JavaScript code outside of the browser on the back-end server. And so you can be a full stack developer who knows just JavaScript. A lot of the major cloud offerings also offer JavaScript libraries. So again, you can run this both on the front end and on the back end. And so that means that you can deploy a fleet of servers, manage them all, run them all, terminate instances, all etc., all from Node.js, all on the back end. And then, of course, you can build out your front end on something like React. With that out of the way, let's get an environment set up so that you can run a piece of JavaScript. So to do JavaScript development, I would recommend 3 basic things to start. Number 1, you need an editor. Number 2, you need some way to host the JavaScript files so that we can navigate to them in the browser. And 3, you need a browser with development tools of some kind. I recommend Chrome, and I'll be doing these tutorials in Chrome. I kind of like to use Python to serve my files. It's a bit weird using a different language, but it's really, really simple. And maybe if we find something better, maybe Node.js has something later, we'll go and switch to that in a later tutorial. But for now, I'm just going to go with Python. If you don't have Python installed, like if you're running these tutorials from Windows, then I would recommend going to get it. It's as simple as just typing Python in the search and hitting the download button. Now there's Python 3.8 and there's Python 2.7. In our case, for hosting code, there's a little bit of a difference, but not a huge one. So I would just go with the latest, Python 3.8. We also need an editor. You can use any editor you want. You can use Notepad, you can use VI, you can use Nano, Emacs, any of those ones that come free with your computer, depending on your OS. It doesn't matter. I prefer Atom. I like to have a little bit of a fancy UI, so I like to have syntax highlighting. I like to get the niceties of integration with things like auto completion, find and replace, all of that cool stuff. You can also edit the theme. You can make it look however you want. And Atom kind of checks all those boxes for me. And as you can see, it runs on OS X, Windows, and Linux. So anybody who's following this tutorial can go and get Atom and run it. Now, whatever you happen to choose, it doesn't really matter that much. We're not going to focus deeply on which editor you choose, and you can probably, if you see me do something in my editor that you don't have, you can probably figure out what I did. What's going to be holding you back is not your choice of editor. So just pick one and get started. As I said, Atom, I really like Atom. It works very well. And the nice thing is it's free. It's completely free. There are some other ones. You can go look at Sublime, for example. You can go look at Sublime Text, for example. It's really versatile and has a lot of nice commands as well. So you can go to files, you can autocomplete, you can do a lot of that cool stuff that a modern editor allows you to do. And Sublime also runs on Mac, Linux, and Windows. So, it's up to you. And Sublime also runs on Mac, Linux, and Windows, so it's not a big deal if you want to grab this instead. The only thing I don't like about Sublime is that it does occasionally ask you to pay for it. I'm not opposed to paying for software, but if there is software that exists that is nearly identical and free, then I'll just take the free version. So let's get started. Let's get some code running in the browser. What I'm going to show you first is the dev tools, or the Chrome developer tools. And these are incredibly important to get to know as a JavaScript developer. So we're just going to find them here in the little, I'm not sure what to call those little 3 dots things. But you click there, go to More Tools, and then Developer Tools. Now you can see that there is a keyboard shortcut that will bring you directly there. You can press Control-Shift-I, or at least on my machine, you can press Control-Shift-I. It might be different on yours, but we'll just navigate to it directly for now. And we're going to open that, and you can see that here we have the developer tool. Now, there's a whole bunch of tabs here, and I will dedicate an entire tutorial on what these mean and which ones are important for you, at least early on. For now, we're just going to go to the console here. So what this is it allows you to type in valid JavaScript and it will execute on the page. So all you do is you type in here. So we're just going to type something that outputs hello. And hit enter. The console.log function is a way for us to log debugging information to this page, to this tab right here, which is the console. So although it wasn't very exciting, when you type console.log, it shows up here. If the code was executing on the page and you want to write out some debugging information, you want to write out something to help you figure out what went wrong, that kind of thing, then you can use console.log statements throughout your code, and it'll show up here in this console tab. And so when I wrote console.log, it said hello, and then this just means that it didn't return anything. Now this demo just gets some JavaScript running, but it's not on the page, it's not in any kind of useful spot. So what we're going to do now is we're going to load a page that has JavaScript on it so that you can see JavaScript running in the browser and not just in the console. What we're going to do is go make a file called index.html, and we're going to write some HTML in there to begin. What I did here was I just made an HTML page and I filled it with some boilerplate code. All this does is makes a really basic HTML page. So we specify the HTML tag. This is the head element. So we have the title that will appear in the browser, and then the body is what is going to appear in the actual on the page itself. And so what we should see is something that just says first JavaScript project and hello on the page. What I'm going to do is just press Control O and navigate directly to the file and open it. And you can see hello, hello. And you can see that the name in the tab is first JavaScript project. Now there's no actual JavaScript running here. All we've done is create an element that says hello. So let's make some JavaScript run here. I'm just going to go back to the index.html and add a script element. What I've done here is I've added a script element, and between the opening and closing tags, you see the tag here with the slash is the closing one. I've just written some pure JavaScript in here. And now we reload, and bang. And there we go. Hello from the console. So we've actually executed JavaScript in the browser that you wrote in the index.html file. Now you're not limited to just outputting some text in the console. You can, when you're running JavaScript on the page, you can manipulate what's called the DOM, or the document object model, which is the representation of the page. Let's go and make the hello say something else. And we'll do that from the console to begin with. What I'm doing here is I'm adding an ID to the hello text, and that'll allow us to find it really easily on the page through JavaScript. I've opened up the console again, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just grab that element on the page and manipulate it. What I did there was I used the document get element by ID function to get the element that I named ID, and I changed the text from hello to goodbye. This should give you a glimpse as to what JavaScript running on the page can do. You can programmatically rewrite the entire page from JavaScript. You can create and destroy elements, change elements, do a whole bunch of stuff. The last thing I want to do is I want to structure this code a little bit better, because running the code directly in the HTML file, although it works for our example, we should at least get ourselves set up to start down the path of bigger projects and better modularization. So the next step is to move this JavaScript into a file on its own and load it from the HTML file. And that's the last thing we're going to do today. So we're going to go back to the index.html file. And I'm going to create a new file. You can see that I named it main.js, and I changed the script element here to reference the main.js file that I just created. So now let's go back to the browser. And this is not going to work. You can see here that this didn't work. And the reason it didn't work is because we're just loading the file directly. And so anytime you reference files externally, you're going to get something like this. And that's because we don't have a full proper environment set up to do anything even remotely beyond a little hello world type of program. So you remember that I mentioned getting Python? What we're going to do is you're going to open a terminal window. On Windows, this would be a command line prompt, and you're going to go to your JavaScript directory, the one that you've got the index.html and main.js files in. Now, I recommend you put them in their own directory. You don't want to host a million other things. And we're going to use Python to launch a really simple HTTP server. In fact, it's actually called Simple HTTP Server. What it does is it launches the Simple HTTP Server module that comes with Python. That's just a lightweight server that serves files for you. So when I press enter, you're going to see now serving HTTP on 0000 port 8000, and that means that you can now go in your browser and you can navigate to localhost 8000. 8000 is just the port that we're running on. And you can see that the file is loaded, and that's bringing up the dev console. And you can see that it ran the JavaScript. You can ignore this little failed to load resource. We didn't bother putting in a fav icon, so it doesn't matter. But you can see that the JavaScript that you put in that file ran. And if we go and change it now, let's add something else. And we can go and reload. And there you go. You'll notice that I ran this using python-m simple HTTP server. That's because my default Python is Python 2.7. If you're running Python 3.8 or whatever, you're going to need to change the command a little bit. So I'll write the command here, and you'll see that it works just fine. So I'll write the command here. Now I have to write Python 3 so that I specify that I'm using Python 3. You'll just write Python. And as you can see, there it goes, same thing. And that's it. So you've got some JavaScript running, you've got some of the basic, so you've got some JavaScript running in your browser, you've got an idea of where a lot of your debugging tools are. That's the developer tools in Chrome. You've got a way to host the JavaScript, and you've got an editor of some kind. So next time I'll go over some of the other tabs. You've got elements, console, sources, network, performance, memory, application, security, and audits. These are all very complex, and you can talk for hours about each one. I'm going to just do a quick tour of each one and probably focus on the first three, because those are the ones, especially when you're first learning, are the most relevant and interesting to you. So stay tuned for that. If you were able to get this working, please let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.